Have you ever feared that your business is going to grow to be way too big? Have you ever found yourself saying, you know what? I don't really want to make that much money. I don't really want to have that big an audience. All that stuff just seems like a hassle, right? If you've ever said those things and you've told yourself, well, that's just my imposter syndrome talking, that's just my, limiting beliefs just getting in the way, right? Like some of that is true, but there is a reality out there that has been happening to some creators that they do end up building their businesses so big and so quickly that they do end up regretting the decision to grow altogether. And today's guest is one of those examples, and I can't wait to share with you his story. My name is Ina Coveney. I'm a marketing strategist and business coach and podcaster, and this is the Superhumans podcast where we interview the top success stories that you know out there, and we deconstruct their success, right? We prove that these superhumans are actually human, and if they achieve that kind of level of success, so can you. And I aim to interview our guests in the same way that you would. I want you to feel like you are sitting across from them, interviewing them and asking them all the questions that you want. So today's guest is Kevin Schmidlin. He is a podcast guest. He's a podcast host and a podcast mentor. And I will give you his full bio later, but I wanted to give you kind of like a sense for why we're interviewing him, but most importantly, my relationship with Kevin. I met Kevin back in 2019 at a podcast movement conference, and I immediately liked him. He's a super likable guy. And a year later, I was phasing out one of my podcasts. I had just done 100 episodes on a podcast called Trailblazing Out of Corporate Life. And I knew that I wanted to reach a new audience. I knew that I wanted it to be different. So right in that moment, I saw a Facebook post from Kevin saying, I'm starting an accelerator. Who wants to do this with me? I knew that I wanted to be in right away. I knew that I wanted to do this with him. So I said, yes, let's get on a call. He got on a call, and it was kind of, it was a sales call for him, but it was a sign-up call for me. Like, I knew that I wanted to do this already. So I'm like, just like giving my credit card, right? Like, where do I sign? What do you need? What more questions can you possibly ask me? Just tell me where to sign, right? Like, that was me. And I did end up signing. Turns out that somebody else beat me to the punch. And earlier that day, he had signed the first person for the accelerator. In the end, he signed 3 people. It was like 3 of us, like starter members. That little program, 2 years later, ended up becoming a $100,000 a month revenue generator for him. Can you imagine going from doing your sales calls, signing 3 clients, celebrating you got 3 clients, right? And then 2 years later, be making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month with it? Just imagine that kind of growth, right? And Kevin is somebody that I just keep going back to. He has been my podcast mentor. He has been my business mentor. I just discovered very quickly. It's just amazing about Kevin, the way his mind works. I discovered very quickly that even though I was in that program to grow my podcast, to learn how to monetize my podcast, what I learned about business and about engaging with people completely changed the direction of my entire business, just getting to talk to Kevin about business. So I continued to hire him. In fact, I'm going to confess right now, I'm going to give you a little tidbit. He came up with a name for this podcast. I hired him to talk to him about, I want my podcast to be named, something incredible, something that makes sense, something that has emotion behind it. And in our workshopping, he's the one that said the words first. How about superhumans? And immediately I felt it all over my body. I was like, that is it. That is it. So you have Kevin to credit for a lot of the things that I have been able to do in my business for this podcast. You got a lot to thank him for already, and you don't even know him. So I just have so much love and appreciation for him and so much admiration from a business standpoint, because I am also guilty of saying to myself that I don't want to grow that big, or being afraid. Mostly for me, it's like being afraid to grow that big. If you guys have ever heard of Vanessa Lau, she's an influencer. She started out in YouTube, then she moved on to Instagram to teach. She had an Instagram academy, and she grew so big so fast that she actually felt like she created her own corporate job in her own business. She was spending so much time managing things that she felt like the joy was just totally sucked out of her life. And she ended up completely shutting down her business for an entire year and just taking a sabbatical and coming back with something that felt a little more aligned. So, and the story that we're about to share from Kevin goes along the same lines. And I want you to hear exactly from him what happened. That's what we're going to be covering today. At the same time, I want you to know that, yes, there is a level of fear that we have that we're going to be growing something too big. But if there's something that I can leave you with, is that even though we know people personally who have felt like they grew too big too fast, there is something to be said for you having really big dreams, because chances are, statistically speaking, we're only going to reach a certain percentage of that dream. Right? And I know this from my personal experience in project management, right? If I set all of these guidelines for a project, right? If I know that I can finish this project in 6 months, and that the budget for this project is going to be whatever it is, I always need to add some buffer. Always need to add buffer, because things rarely work out exactly the way you planned. You rarely reach exactly the goal that you were hitting right in the head. So what you want to do is really give your mind the opportunity, the freedom to dream really big, so that you can achieve goals that you're really, really happy with. That's my philosophy in life. So I definitely don't want you to walk away from this interview, from this conversation, thinking, well, then I should think smaller. Then I should dream smaller. No, my friend, dream as big as you can. Dream as big as your mind will allow you to dream. But always be watching whether you're still in alignment with what you're doing. That is the trick of it. It's not to dream smaller. It's not to make your dreams, come down 3 notches. That's not where the solution to this is. So I'm going to leave it right there. I'm going to leave you there with your dreams, okay? When you're listening to this episode, think about your dreams, learn from the lessons that Kevin made, and listen for what were the moments of realization, the sparks of genius that he had in his journey to his dreams, and listen for what he's doing now and how he's adjusting to a life that really fits him best. I can't wait to share this with you. So let me introduce you to my friend Kevin Schmidlin. Kevin Schmidlin is a podcaster and podcast coach. His first podcast, Philly Who, was launched in 2018 as a side hustle while he was a corporate software developer. Just months after launching the show, Kevin decided to leave his 9-to-5 and go all in on the podcast. Within 18 months, Philly Who surpassed 100,000 downloads and more than $140,000 in monetized revenue. In 2020, Kevin began helping other podcasters grow and monetize their shows as well. He launched Grow the Show, the podcast, and Grow the Show Accelerator, an intensive podcast accelerator program. Since then, Grow the Show podcast has amassed an audience of 50,000 plus, and Grow the Show Accelerator has served over 400 podcasters. And on that, I can't wait for you to learn more about Kevin, his journey, how he can help you dream big and create the life and the business that you actually want to keep running down the line. So we're going to tackle that fear right here. If you're watching on YouTube, all you have to do is click right here to check out that interview. And if you're listening to the podcast, this episode begins now.